You're listening to Xsgaming Podcast, a podcast for gamers by gamers, with your hosts Xander, Skullion, and James Gruesome, bringing you something old, something new, and a little bit of nostalgia too.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Xsgaming Podcast. This is episode 106. And we're recording this on the 19th of August. I'm one of your hosts, Xander Skullion, and joined with me is my wonderful co-host, Mr. James Gruesome. What's up, James?
What's up, everybody? You know me, living the high life, working every single day, and trying to make sure my cat is eating. That is my life. And then some games in between when I can. But it's still all good. Everything's still great, and I hope you all are doing wonderful, no matter what time of day you may be listening.
Exactly, and yeah, you know, this is kind of a special episode, because this episode is kind of like our anniversary episode in some aspects, because it was around this time, about 5 years ago, it's around this time that I had just had this weird idea, like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast, and James was like, hey, if you ever need a guest, I would love to be a guest, and you became my co-host.
The guest that never left, that would be me. It's a prime example of just really how fast time can go by. You know, it's always been awesome. It's been fun. And it's been a great, time being part of this. The people I've met and everything, doing the shows, it's always fun. But it's just, man, when you think like 5 years is still just like a blink of an eye, you know, to use one of those terms, because it just goes to show. So it's always just a sign to appreciate the time you have when you can, because that shit flies by, man.
It really does. And, you know, when we first started, we were on Blog Talk Radio. We were recording the shows on our cell phones. We were only allowed to have 30 minutes because I wasn't going to pay a subscription fee for us to have like an hour. And if I'm not mistaken, you couldn't curse, like we couldn't cuss or any shit like that. So
yeah.
We would get censored. So I was sitting there and I was taking down memory lane, and I went on Google and I put in Xsgaming Podcast on Blog Talk Radio, and our first 12 episodes are still on there. And this episode, it was episode 3. This was the introduction of James Gruesome. And I'm going to read the description real quick, because this is kind of funny. It says, episode 3. This episode introduces our first guest, James Gruesome. We talk about our love for arcades, Sega CD to 32X, and the underrated TurboGrafx 16. You won't want to miss this. This is a 2-part podcast, a first in Xsgaming. This was like the 3rd episode. It's the first in everything.
One of many. You had Lonely Xander on the episode 1 and 2.
Oh, man.
I asked to be the first guest, and then I remember afterwards, because it went good, and I was like, hey, man, you mind if I just, stick around for a bit? And it was always with the intention. I was like, hey, if you find somebody else you want to do this with, I was like, I'll just hang around for a bit, or if it was never like a pushing myself on there, but in a way I kind of did. But, at the same time, it just ended up working out, and things are how they are many years later.
Yeah, well, it was just the instant chemistry, because even back then, like, you and I, like, we knew each other, from your wife, and Liz helping my old band get shows at the Rock Shop in Fayetteville, and we played a couple of shows.
Roots in the horror rock scene, you know?
Yeah. And so we kind of already knew each other a little bit, but I have to say, like, when I started getting really into collecting, and I was posting a lot more video game stuff on Facebook, and you were like, hey, I like video games too. It just, I don't know, it was just kind of like we just really hit it off.
Yeah, I think too, like, I had actually just recently gotten on Facebook from when it started, because it was still, people had been on it, but I was kind of like, man, I'm always like old and just like, man, I don't want to do this trendy thing because I'm too cool. And finally I was like, hey, I'm going to go and make a Facebook. And that was, of course, people I knew, like you. It was like, hey, friends, what's going on? Started seeing gaming posts, and it was like, oh, hey, dude, it's like, you're into that too? That's awesome, because even back then, sometimes, like, it was like me, my brother EJ, we were into it for a while, and so you still didn't really run into that many people, where nowadays you can see how the hobby has truly grown, just from everything going on in it, as far as game prices, what have you, people complaining, NES Classics just really within this time span of the time we're doing the show of shit really getting into high gear as far as the collecting scene from that time just shooting on up forward. And it really hasn't, as many people would say there could be a drop or a bust coming. So in the past 5 years, nothing has slowed down. It's only sped up, and it's really still going,
Yeah, it's one of those things, you bring up a good point about how just finding people to talk about games with. And, it's funny because, like, even today, I went to Office Depot and I was printing out a custom, like, Genesis cover for Sonic Mania because I got the special edition. It came with a cartridge. So I was like, I'm going to make my own, like, cover for it. And I went to Office Depot to print it. And the guy, when he saw me, he saw I was wearing a Capcom shirt. He was like, man, that's freaking awesome right there. And then I was wearing my hat. I was wearing my Make Konami Great Again hat. I was wearing that, and I was wearing it backwards, so I flipped it around like, dude, look at this hat. And he was like, oh, man, I gotta take a picture of that. And it was like, when I see moments like that, when I'm walking around with video game shirts and someone, like, a stranger stops me and they're like, man, I like N64 too. I'm like, this really shows you how much gaming as a hobby has really grown, how it's become so acceptive in just the last couple of years. Because I remember, there was a time that, for one, it was hard to find video game t-shirts. And secondly, if you walked around with like a Super Mario shirt, some people would be like, I don't know. Oh, he's wearing like a silky anime shirt or something,
Yeah, very, very easily could get thrown into like the fucking dork category.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. I mean, gaming wasn't always like the cool thing. It was something that, a lot of us weren't. I have never been ashamed of it, and I think you can agree with that. But it's definitely something now that you can like talk about, as opposed to the way it was a couple of years ago. And I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's so much more, accessible. But at the same time, it does come with the with more people into it and growing. Sometimes less things are available. It's a double-edged sword, but I think at the end of the day, you can always find the fun in it no matter what. You can still get some goodness or a smile out of it at the end of the day. And really, like, that's the most important thing.
You know what, James? That was actually a really good segue. That was a really good segue because this leads into the next topic that I wanted to talk about when you're talking about the accessibility of games and whatnot. And let's talk about limited run. Okay, because limited run, for some of you guys that are out of the know that don't know what limited run is, it's a company actually based out of Cary, North Carolina. It's actually not too far away from us, their studios. But these guys, they focus on making physical versions of indie games or digital only games. Now, they're called limited run because they only make a certain amount of numbers. A great example would be like the recent Wonder Boy and Night Trap only had 3,000 made. And, limited run's been around since I think it was 2 years now is when it really started kicking in. And it started out as very niche, and now it's just become pure pandemonium. Great example was Wonder Boy was under some controversy, same with Night Trap, because these games are so sought after from limited run that people were logging in and trying to buy it, and in 2 seconds, it was completely sold out. Sold out.
They were getting the items in their cart even to the point, because really a lot of things I've seen have been negative. A lot of people are upset because they're like, man, if I had this in my cart, and even sometimes the purchase about went through from what I understand, and then it would still, come back, it would cancel out. And, they put sales on 2 times a day, which you think it's like, oh, that sounds great. But for the amount of people that want these, me and Xander we just like the people to, get the things that they want. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of starting to really seem like it's a problem. Like you said, definitely with Wonder Boy, Night Trap, I've seen a lot of negative feedback. I understand things being limited, but if there's the demand and the people to buy them, like, they don't want to get stuck with, extra stock. Shadow Complex was the first game and actually only game I've bought for them. I loved it. I was like, oh man, dude, like, I get this. I got it, no problem.
Yeah, same here.
Like, I didn't have an issue, but I guess maybe not that many people really wanted Shadow Complex like I did. A lot of other, or maybe it's just picked on because this was a couple years ago when I first did that, and it's just the more and more people getting into it, I'm kind of thinking maybe they need to work on making a little bit more stock because you're gonna make the money. Even Night Trap, like I was like, man, like I checked on Wonder Boy, like it was gone, and I downloaded it. Night Trap. I didn't really want it for the game. Like I had the original game and I don't ever play it because it kind of sucks. But I thought actually having like the packaging, to me, that was the draw that time.
Yeah.
We can say like, oh, it's all about playing the game, but sometimes there's something like Night Trap, we can all admit it's not that good. And the idea of having like a collector's edition, with a box, I don't know if it came with a post. I think it came with like a record even, which is even really cool. And it was gone. I did look on there. I wasn't heartbroken because a lot of times with me, I'm like, if it's there, I'll get it. Like if not, oh well. And apparently, a lot of people were upset, and we just want to see these people get the stuff. So I'd like to see them. Since there is the demand, I don't really think they're going to get stuck with much leftover, especially for certain games that have some hype around them that they know. Like maybe they should work more on doing some polls, maybe even a slight pre-order thing, and I think it would work out better, for them selling more product, making more money, and the fans and the gamers getting the things that they want.
Now, they have tried to do a pre-order before in the past, and it was a complete disaster because it is a small company. It really is. But the thing about Limited Run is Limited Run really tries to set themselves as we're here for the gamers to want to play physical copies of their games. But the problem is you have a lot more collectors, like hardcore collectors, than gamers that want to get this. They want it for the collection because it is Limited Run. It becomes a thing where some people just want the game because they want to be like, I have it and you don't. And it's a sad reality because I've known a lot of people that went out and got Limited Run, and they would get the games, keep them sealed, and still go out and buy the digital game, and they'd be like, oh, I'm just going to keep it sealed for my collection. And I'm just like, I don't like that practice at all, because there's someone out there who wants the physical media, and the thing is in return, Limited Run is just pushing more gamers, quote unquote gamers. They're just pushing more gamers towards actual digital, because the way I look at it, I could get up at 10 a.m. or a little bit before 10 a.m. because that's when the games go live, is at 10 a.m. and at 6 p.m. I can get up at 10 a.m. on a Friday if I'm not working and try to get this game, or I can just go on PSN and pay, the same price, maybe even cheaper, and just have it on my hard drive. Because in the end, I just want to play the game. I'd love to have physical media. I'd love to have a disc. I was lucky enough to get Wonder Boy, but at the end of the day, it's just it's like they're creating their own monster and they're pushing this kind of market, and it's terrible. It really is. They really need to think about it. Yeah,
it just kind of makes you wonder. It's almost like some things like, are they doing this on purpose? Like, they're just being jerks. I like to think it's not the case. And, like I said, I see both sides. Like I said, for me with the Night Trap, I wanted it more in a collector's sense just because it's Night Trap. That's why I had it before. It's Night Trap. You all know the story. That's what it is, and that was why more the reason I wanted it as opposed to playing it. Because I could go on and download it. Like, will I? Like, no. Maybe if it comes on the Switch. I keep hearing they want to put it on there since it was always said that Night Trap would never be on Nintendo.
That would be fun. Yeah,
that would just be kind of funny. I would get it at that point, but I just would like to see them make more. And lots of times you can go on their site and there are certain games available. Not everything sells out, but like I said before, certain games that have a demand or some kind of mystique behind them, just ones you really know more people are gonna get. It's like they can check up and see what the talk is around, and just maybe put out more of a certain title, and then it would work out because I think their prices are good. There's lots of good about it, but then the main bad is just the people not being able to get it, like you said, they're kind of pushing some of the people away. Some want it for, to actually play the physical and collection. Some want it just collection. Such a mixed bag of consumers.
It really is.
They really kind of need to work on finding that happy medium to appease everybody, because the more products sold has just got to be more money for them. I mean, I would assume. I could be wrong, but probably not. But it just seems like that. More products sold, more money, and maybe some of these things like Night Trap, Wonder Boy. They say it's a limited. If there is such a demand, maybe we could see some kind of second run at some point. I don't really see a problem if they wanted to, maybe change up some of the cover art or offer some different, deals, something's a little different. You might have the same people just trying to buy it again just to have every single one, but it may be some other option for some of these titles that are such a high priority.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see in due time. Now, apparently, the next game for limited run is going to be Ys Origins, which I'm a huge Ys fan. I would love to get it. I have it on the PSN, and I just don't feel like getting up early in the morning and like trying to pre-order it, because I know it's just a disaster. So I'm like, you know what? I have it on PSN. I have it digitally. I'm fine with that. I don't have to have the game on disc. It's just, it is what it is. But speaking of like special editions and collector's editions, a really, really nice collection just went live today that we're recording, and that is Yakuza 6, The Song of Life. The pre-order for the special collector's edition just went live on Amazon for $89. Dude, this is a really cool collector's edition and a really fair price. You guys get the game, of course. You also get these really nice like glasses, like drinking glasses. Like they look almost like Scotch glasses from a bar, and they have like this really cool like almost like stained glass kind of dragon on it. You get some coasters, you get a thing of dice and an art book. And I mean, I think it's really, really cool. And I had to go out and pre-order it. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and throw it down. I got to have this.
Yeah, you had sent to me the picture, and I was like, oh, wow. And a little bit after that, like EJ, he'd sent me, he's like, did you see this? And he'd saw it, I think, from like a post you had done. I was like, yeah, I just saw that. And I was kind of guesstimating on price. And, you never know with some of the ones. And this one does look like it has like a decent amount of stuff. And you never know, like, are they going to do like up to the 150 range? And I was thinking probably going to be maybe around 100. Ended up being even less. Either way, I knew I was getting it. I'm going to go ahead and jump on the pre-order too. Just a really cool set. Even pre-ordering Yakuza 0 came with the little, business card holder, had a couple cards, little felt bag. That was still really nice. And that was just, regular price if you pre-ordered it. So this one, I think for all the stuff, especially if you're a Yakuza fan, hey, drinking glasses, always great, Dice are always cool. No matter what. It's a really good setup. I think it's a fair price because, when you think about it, 90, you're paying $30 extra, for some pretty cool stuff that you could actually, use. Sometimes special edition sets are just like, it's just like some crap maybe you don't care about. But this one, it's cool. It's fitting of the game as far as like the bar scene, gambling, a lot of things going on. Just a really awesome setup. It's just kind of crazy for me to think it's like pre-ordering something. It's like, man, that seems so far away. But as we talked earlier about, many years flying by, before you know it, it'll be here. So, I mean, really not that far off.
I mean, it's hard to believe that in 2 weeks we have Yakuza Kiwami coming out, and I'm just like, wow, 29th of August.
Dude, not even, wait, was it that one? No, that one's the 22nd. That's next week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Mario and Rabbids is the 29th. Uncharted and Kiwami is the 22nd. So that's coming up just right around the corner.
I'm so stoked. I am so stoked for that game because, I went ahead and pre-ordered it, paid it off. That and Mario Rabbids. I mean, just August alone, man. August has been such a amazing month for gaming. I mean, we've had so many great titles, and this is the first time in a while that I've gotten like a nice stack of games. And I was like, okay, I don't need to buy anything for a little while, because I got Mario Rabbids to play, I got Yakuza to play. I just got Sonic Mania. I'm so preoccupied, and Wonder Boy is coming in very soon, so I'm good.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I know, right?
Too many games. I still have ones in the wrapper I've gotten from my Switch. I've been working so much, and my wife has been out sick from work, so a lot of times I hang out with her and just like have not had the most game times. It's like I literally have new games I've yet to play, which to me is pretty cool because I'm like, oh man, it's like I'd still go play like Puyo Puyo, Cave Story. Haven't even cracked them open yet. Splatoon 2. I've got quite a few sitting around. I'm just waiting for the chance to get to play them. It'll come eventually, so it's kind of hard to stave off because it's like you said, the games, man, they just keep coming around this time, man. It's been awesome, like summer and just year for games.
Yeah. Now before we take our break, that gave me another idea, James. You just recently got your Switch. Now, when we were recording the last episode, you were actually waiting on it to come in the mail, and now that you have it, let's hear your first impressions. What do you think about the Switch? Like, what was your initial thoughts when you first started playing with it, and how are you digging it?
I'm really liking it. It is, like I said, with limited time I've had, it's the only system I've played. As much as I played my PS4 before, just with lack of time and having this new system, I've been trying to focus more time on it. Got Mario Kart with it. Picked up Street Fighter and, like I mentioned, the like Puyo and Cave Story, which I've yet to even play. Been hitting kind of heavy on the eShop sometimes. Like I'm still just constantly games. It's like, it's like I'm gonna go ahead and get this one. I picked up Wonder Boy. Man, along with just so many other ones, it's like I'm kind of like overwhelmed. But it's like I see the thing and I just kind of want to get it for the system. I had gotten the, you had recently too had a slight issue with Amazon.
Oh yeah.
I had pre-ordered the Hori controller, which is coming out that following Monday after we did our show. I remember talking during it, and you were like, "You should go ahead and go for that." So it was set to come out that Monday, and I noticed I never got like a shipping up. Actually, on the 1st, which was Tuesday, was when I got the Switch. I was expecting it Wednesday, but I got it like same day as when I guess that batch from ThinkGeek came out. Which was a day early to me. It was like super awesome. And I was waiting. I was let me check on Ori, and it was like it hadn't shipped. I checked on the website on Amazon. It was out of stock. And it just – I was kind of like, huh. I was like, but I pre-ordered this. Like, why is it out of stock? Why don't I have this? So I canceled it. Went ahead and took that money. It was about $30. And I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and get the actual Nintendo Pro. I'm like, that's fine. I know it's a good controller, but I've switched back and forth in between those. I do use the Pro a lot. I got the red and blue one. I love the red and blue. The red and blue just makes me happy. Whether it's actually attached to my Switch, sitting up in the dock, whether it's on the controller, which I like using. Actually, I like using that one a lot too. It makes for a good controller. It was questionable at first. I was like, kind of like, how would this feel? Would this be kind of small? But it's it really got a good feel to it too. Overall, I like the setup. I've yet to even use it as a handheld device. Like I've pretty much kept it completely, in the dock, except when I was doing some setup. Like I said, with lack of time, I'm sure later on, I will be, using it downstairs when I'm hanging out with my wife instead of just, watching TV like I have been. Really exciting. I'm really looking forward to me, with as good as it's been doing, it's kind of just like a very open world of what we could get, what we could expect. Maybe some old, Nintendo properties that could come back. I'm really just kind of like wide-eyed about it as far as what we could end up with. It's just actually, I don't really get super excited about too many things, but overall it's pretty exciting because just, it's already selling more than the Wii U. People are into this. It's in demand. You hear about people having trouble getting them, which I didn't. I got one online. It was like, no problem. Maybe some people actually need to go get one in store. I don't know people's particular situations, but I think with Mario coming out, there's going to be more and more available. I think it's awesome. If it's something anybody's thinking about getting, I say, go ahead and get it. like, more and more good stuff's coming out. I have games I've yet to even play. People say there's no games on it. Maybe some people can sit around and play games all day. If you can, more power to you. Maybe you run out of stuff to play. But for me, it's backlogged. Like I said, constantly getting eShop games. Still, I'd still like to I might get ARMS at some point. Like I got Splatoon sitting there. Stuff I haven't even played. It's really exciting. It's once again really fun having a new system, and it's just more games and more awesome stuff. And I'm looking forward to what the future holds for Nintendo. They're back.
Yeah, the Nintendo Switch is one of those things. And I'll go ahead and say this before we go on break. How I treat the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch to me is a palate cleanser. I mainly game a lot on my PS4. The PS4 has a lot of great games coming out, a lot of great exclusives, but there's games that were coming out for the Switch that is exclusively Nintendo that I love to play, but also there's times that a game might be coming out that's multi-plat that's coming out on PS4 and Nintendo Switch. A great example would be, like Sonic Mania. Sonic Mania came out on Xbox One, PS4, and the Switch. Now, I got it for the Switch, and the reason why is because there's games that I want to play anytime I want. JRPGs, 9 times out of 10, if it's coming out for the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch, there's a chance I'm probably going to get on the Nintendo Switch because a JRPG is very time consuming, and I could bring my Switch to work with me and I can play during my lunch breaks. I can play it before I go into work. I can play while I go off to whatever. I can still play it, and I like that option. I like the fact that I can play this game anywhere I want, and there's no drawbacks. There's no this is the handheld version of it. It's going to be dumbed down. It's exactly the way it is. And what's great is you can sit there and be playing it on the go. Right when you get home, you can just put the tablet right into the dock, and boom, you're playing it right there on the television. There's no waiting for it to load or anything like that, and that's what I really like about it. And right now, there's confirmed 37 titles coming out in 2017 for the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch has already sold around 15 million units. Now, this is I'm sorry, I got my numbers wrong. It's sold around 5 million. Okay, now the Wii U, this is where I got confused. The Wii U sold 15 million units the 5 years that the console was out. So you got a console that's 6 months old that's sold 5 million compared to a console that's been out for 5 years that's sold 15 million. I mean, this is something special when you really think about it. You're like, wow, this is something really nice. So, yeah, I could see Nintendo Switch doing really, really well if it keeps the momentum. Just keep on coming out with the games. Keep giving us options. I know there is one game I'm going to probably be triple dipping in, and that is Dragon Quest XI. And the reason why is because, one, I love Dragon Quest, and I want more Dragon Quest to come to the West. We had Dragon Quest Builders 2 coming out. I'm really excited about that. But Dragon Quest XI did something a little special, and this is something that I want to see us do more in the future with multiplats. You could have Dragon Quest XI on, say you're playing it on the 3DS. Now, the 3DS version has actually a different feature compared to the PS4 and the Switch. The 3DS version has a feature that you can make it play like a 2D JRPG, like old school 2D RPG, and it's the same exact game, just old school, or you could switch it to the 3D. But say you have it on the 3DS and you're playing it, and you're to a certain spot and you're really enjoying it, but hey, you want to get on the PS4. You buy it on the PS4, you can actually play from your progress of the 3DS on the PS4 version via password. They had this password that if you have this password, it transfers your saves to the different ports of the multiplats. That is freaking amazing. And I was like, oh, that makes me even more want to buy all three, because I was like, if I end up buying all three, there's going to be one that I stick to, and the rest of them just be kind of like collector kind of thing. Be like, oh, I just got the rest of them. But now I could play on the PS4. If I want to go somewhere, I'm like, oh, I want to play it on the Switch. Go play it on the go. And then after I get done beating it, months, years later, whatever, if I want to go back to it and play it like the old school way, I can play it on the 3DS. That's freaking amazing. I love that concept.
Yeah, very cool to have those options. I remember reading about that, and I was just like, man, that's be cool to see more people kind of try to embrace some kind of format when it's on, different systems. With me, I'll stick with the Switch a lot because I'm out of room on my PS4 right now. Honestly, I'm just out of room. So a lot of times if it's multi-platform, plus too with having a new system, sometimes I like to stick, more with that. Hell, I don't play many RPGs. Dragon Quest coming out. Who knows? I might even jump back into it when I do. Definitely be on the Switch, and like you said, with the ability to have the handheld, which I've yet to really, delve into. It almost doesn't even cross my mind yet. Just when the chance I get to play, I'll just sit in front of the TV. But it's like, yeah, at some point, I'm gonna pull that out. It's kind of like what I always wanted with the Wii U, was just to be able to go into like a different room, go downstairs and. The fact that you could almost always find those, and like you said, I still hear people complaining, just aren't. I think you can get them, but a lot of times people just want to walk into a random store. Maybe some places have the bundles. Depends on where you live, but they are still in demand, and people are still having trouble finding them. And that's probably going to push on up, into the holiday season. I'd say if you're thinking about getting one, go ahead and snag one, because it could only get harder, especially with the Mario coming out. Maybe they'll do some kind of new bundle too, with the system and the Mario. As it gets closer to the season, we'll be hearing more and more about what might be coming out.
Yep, only time will tell. Well, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about some Sonic and Barbarian games. What a mix with that, huh? But yeah, guys.
What is best in life?
Yeah, Barbarians and Sonic the Hedgehog. So sit back and relax, guys. We'll be right back. And we are back, guys, from our little break. We had to play some Sonic music. With the celebration of the 25th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog and the release of Sonic Mania, what can I say? I'm just head over heels with a little blue hedgehog right now. Sonic Mania is so much freaking fun. And with this being said, I wanted to talk a little bit about some did you know facts of Sonic the Hedgehog. Are you ready to hear some of this, James?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Sonic, his story started with a ball in a tube. Programmer Yuji Naka started small with his prototype for the game, featured a simple character running through a long tube while inside a life-size ball. He used this version of the game to create the algorithm that would become Sonic's complex motion scheme possible. That's really interesting.
Yeah, just thing with tubing and kind of makes me think of early Strider. I remember that being the one, the guy shooting through the tube is always cool, and you can kind of see a progression of that later on with Sonic. How he'd run through his tunnels and tubes and such. Very cool.
And Sonic actually was originally going to be a rabbit. They originally was going to have him a rabbit, but they decided that rabbits don't go in little balls, and that was something they really wanted to do. But they wanted to make like a little animal that like kind of was like the cutesy rival of Mario, but then they decided with the hedgehog and more of an attitude, which I think was a better idea, because that was one of the things that made the Sega Genesis a little bit different than the Super Nintendo's. They had that little edge. They were like, this is the cool hedgehog with spikes and red shoes. And he was originally going to be a rabbit, and then they were like, well, maybe we can make him an armadillo, but they decided to make him a hedgehog, and that was a really good idea. I think the hedgehog really, really worked out for that.
Yeah, nobody cares about armadillos, really. And I mean, it was just a good, that time. Like I said, the 90s, the attitude. It was a very good Game Sack episode out I watched recently about, games with Tude. And it just makes you think, it's like, wow, it's like, man, it really was like that back then. It makes you think about certain times, your Simpsons. Bart Simpson was real big on having his little attitude. It carried over into so many things, and it worked on many levels for Sonic. And you could see it actually, did stand out from the crowd, did succeed as being a good game, because you saw many imitators that definitely failed. So at least Sonic was able to accomplish something new at that time. There was nothing that fast that, we had ever seen. And it still managed to, it was a gimmick of speed, but it still managed to be a game that a lot of people loved and carried on, for many sequels, good or bad. We can see now with Sonic Mania that, is still turning out really good games.
And I think the name Sonic is a lot better than its original name, which is when we called Mr. Needlemouse.
That sounds horrible.
I mean, could you see people being like, oh, I got a new Sega Genesis and I got that new game, Mr. Needlemouse. I mean,
I'm only thinking. I remember the T-shirts that would come out with like, Chronic the Hemp Hog, and I'm sorry, like the Needle Mouse just makes me think of like somebody shooting up some dope in an alleyway somewhere. That's horrible. Give me Chronic the Hemp Hog any day over, Needle. God damn.
and he was also gonna have a human girlfriend named Madonna. So imagine like Mr. Needlemouse and Madonna. It's a new game on the Sega Genesis. Oh my god.
It's horrible. Nobody wants to see that.
But yeah, I mean, it's. I'm looking at some of this stuff, and some of it's a lot of people already know about it. Especially like his shoes, his red shoes was the inspiration from Michael Jackson, of all things. Also, his attitude, the attitude that we all have come to love, was the inspiration from, of all people, Bill Clinton. Apparently, Bill Clinton had that, do it all attitude, and the Japanese saw that, and they're like, yeah, it's kind of like the role model that we want to go after. Which, I mean, it makes sense, because, I mean, Bill Clinton played saxophone and stuff like that. He was,
he was one of the very first, cool presidents. He definitely had that vibe. I can think, too, I remember with Sonic, when he would sit there when you'd wait for too long, and he'd start, stammering his foot and looking at you. And I can remember many years before, game I still love. It still comes out in different forms, called Boulder Dash. And,
oh yeah,
you were like this little bug dude that would run, through dirt under boulders. Pretty much a puzzle game, collect the flashing jewels. But that was an early version. I could remember he would stomp his foot, when you would stop and wait, and that was quite 5 years or more, prior to Sonic. But Sonic was the one I think that definitely brought that, up to the forefront, to where that became more of a, kind of bringing you, breaking a wall within a game.
Yeah.
The thing sitting there, whatever character you are, it's like, come on, it's like, hurry up. What are you doing? I'm bored. Move me around. Come on.
Yeah, definitely. Compared to Mario, Sonic did break a lot of the fourth wall. Rather it was looking at you and stomping his foot like he was waiting, or even some of the cartoons like the recent Sonic Boom. A lot of people hate on Sonic Boom the video game, but let me tell you guys, watch Sonic Boom the cartoon, because it makes fun of itself. Like, it makes fun of Sonic in some ways, because I remember I was watching an episode and Amy was like getting some new video game, and Knuckles and Sonic were like, yeah, the game's just not as fun as it used to be now they've went 3D. They really lost the moment, and stuff like, and you're like, oh my god, they're totally talking about Sonic. And like little stuff like that, especially with the controversy with the Sonic fan base, with Sonic's arms being blue instead of like a tan color. Like, they made fun of that in Sonic Boom. They're like, I had this dream that my arms were a different color. Stuff like that. It's really fun. It's a really fun cartoon. I really, really recommend it for the listeners to check it out. Sonic Boom the cartoon. Really good stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's nice. Sonic Mania has became a really, really good game. And for some of the people that are on the fence about Sonic Mania being like, oh, is it good? To me, Sonic Mania, it's one of those games that feels like it was a game that Sega made 20 years ago, and they just now released it. Like, it has so much nostalgia, so many feels, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like a gimmick. Some things you play that are like playing off of nostalgia kind of feel kind of gimmicky sometimes. Like, sometimes you're just like, oh, you're just holding on to the past, or you're just, making us feel good about what happened in the past. But they'll have a zone that would be like, oh, this is like Sonic 2. And you'll be playing halfway through the zone, and then everything changes, and they add little Easter eggs from the various games. Even Sonic Fighters, like an arcade-only Sonic game, fighting game, that was only in the arcades. It got released as a port on the Sonic Gems collection on the GameCube. Really horrible to like 3D fighter. Like, it's really not good. But they added some of the characters in Sonic Mania that were like in Sonic Fighters that are in Sonic Mania. Like, you see them in the game, and you're just like, oh man, I remember that guy, that little wolf guy that was wanted. He was a little desperado. It's like, stuff like that. It's really, really cool, and it's a really fun game. It's a lot of fun.
It's one, like, I'd say with you, I'm like, if you like Sonic at all, and like, I'm terrible at Sonic, but it's still fun to play, to me. So if you're a fan of the early ones, anything up to Sonic CD, I'd say definitely, get it. It's worth it. I was going to get one of the collector's editions, but I waited at the last minute, and I was like, well, I'll see if I can get it on Switch. And having some trouble ordering it, and I guess it just ended up being sold out. They didn't really have the best wordage on the website of it just being like, oh, this is sold out. So I was like, oh well, I don't really need more stuff. But I remember seeing yours, and I was like, wow,
yeah.
Like, that thing was, pretty impressive what you get with the size. I was thinking something was going to be a lot smaller. So when you look at, the special edition being 80, games about 20, if you're a collector or not, I think it really did come, with some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the statue to me is worth it. And I was telling a lot of people, because the Sonic Mania Collector's Edition didn't come with the physical game. There's no physical game for Sonic Mania right now. It's just a download code. And some people were kind of turned off. They're like, I don't want to pay that much for a game that I'm not going to own. But in theory, like the way I told people, like great example, I was talking to my friend Tag, Power Metal Gamer. I was talking to him on the phone, and I'm like, man, this is how I look at it. I bought myself a Sonic statue, like a 12-inch Sonic statue that's standing on a actual size Model 1 Genesis. It's like the same exact size. I'm like, I got this, and I got a replica cartridge and a card and a golden ring and all that stuff. I got all that for, $80, and I got a game for free. That's how I look at it. Because to be completely honest, like, video game statues are very expensive. An $80 video game statue is pretty cheap. Because if you go online right now and you put in Sonic statue on eBay, you're going to be looking at, a $300 to $400 statue. That's probably around the same size.
It is, like I said, when you sent me the pic, it's legit big. I was really surprised and impressed, with the size. It was way more than I expected of what was going to come with it. So, it is really cool. I don't know if they're still available. When I was checking, I could have still got a PS4. Other ones, the Switch, maybe they made more limited numbers. Maybe more people were just, going after that one. But that was the one I wanted to end up, playing. So I kind of passed on the collectors. But, there might still be some out there. Somebody is on the fence about it, and you're just wondering. Like, it is. I think it's worth it. At the end of it, it is really, actually, really good special edition. Set up, all things considered, without having a physical copy. I think it's still really cool.
I've kind of had to discipline myself on collector's editions. There was a time that anything that came out that had a collector's edition, I had to get it. But now that my financial situation has changed, I got to be very picky about what I get as a special edition. And this is one that, I pre-ordered a year ago. Pre-ordered a special edition, so I had to have it. And yeah, I went through some stuff with Amazon. I had a nice little Twitter war with Amazon because, the game was coming out on the 15th and Amazon was like, you get your special edition on the 21st. And I'm like, what? The 21st? And I made a post about it on Twitter, and Amazon saw it, and they tried to respond, to have customer service. They're like, well, we're so sorry. And I'm like, this is unacceptable. This makes no sense. And people with Amazon Prime are getting it on the 17th, and I'm getting it on the 21st. And I made a Let's Play where I played a Sonic fan-made game called Sonic Before the Sequel, and I made a YouTube video of it, and I kind of explained it on my YouTube channel about Amazon. And the day that I uploaded that video, that's when Amazon messaged me back, and they're like, "All right, we'll send it to you on the 17th." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right. I'm not as angry now." But sometimes it's good to fuss out,
You never know if putting that up, or if it was just some kind of, maybe they were shipping on, a day of when it came out, and there was just some misunderstanding, or if you actually got them into a little bit of action. You never know. But the end of it, getting a couple days later is not so bad. But, still would have been better, day of. But at least if everybody was on that same line, you just, it's a picky subject. 21st is definitely too far away, though. That was kind of bogus right there. But at least at the end of the day, it all worked out.
Exactly. Now, going off of Sonic a little bit, and going into a completely different topic. This episode idea came from our last episode, and we were talking about stuff, and you mentioned Barbarian games, and I was like, man, this would be a really good topic for another episode. And that's kind of like what we were going to talk about. Like, I got a couple of games that I wanted to talk about that was like Barbarian based, but I'm going to ask you, James, what was the first game that you played that you saw the cover and saw this big, brooding, muscular dude doing awesome shit, and he was a barbarian?
I'm going to have to go back a ways, to a different time, 1983. 5-year-old James going to see Conan the Barbarian in the movie theater. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was, hitting his height, going in, before Predator, before Commando. He was Conan, and it was awesome. Having He-Man as a kid. I'm sure people, a couple generations before had Cowboys and Indians, which I still appreciated Cowboys and Indians, but Barbarians, it was just a big thing in the 80s. Movies, like I said, the Conans, the myriad of ripoffs, Deathstalker, Beastmaster, which can stand on its own.
I love Beastmaster.
For me, I'm a big fan of Conquest. It's a little bit less known. Lucio Fulci, that did Zombie, The Beyond, House by the Cemetery, lots of really great horror movies in Italian cinema, did a Barbarian movie himself, which also ends up having zombies and such in it. Sometimes you had a really cool, looking buff guy like Conan, of course, with Arnold, and sometimes you had a little bit, I don't know, the guy looked a little bit more weak. He wasn't really your normal depiction of a barbarian. He-Man, really huge. So barbarians were just big everywhere. So the games were a big attraction. One of the very first ones I would remember would be in the arcade at Putt Putt near my house would be Rastan.
Oh, yeah.
A total Sega classic for those that know. It pretty much is a Conan game. That's what you think. It's like, but, no, he's Rastan. Really big too. Conan came with a lot of the comics, the black and white ones, Robert E. Howard. Lots of really cool books if you're into it. There's lots of stuff to check out. But Rastan, man, just had it. Buff dude, climbing up vines, killing bestial enemies. You had swords, you could upgrade your weapon, to maces. And very hard. I was terrible at it. It's one of those games that, as I've played later in life, it's on the Master System too, and some different collections. It's on it's a Taito, one of the Taito collections. You can play it on there, which I think is the first home arcade version. Very tough. I finally got farther than I did as a kid. It was a game like Rolling Thunder, very influential. It's a game I loved. I dropped many a quarters into it, but I fucking sucked so bad at it, but they still captured my imagination, and I was able to go back and play them, over and over. So Rastan, definitely one of the very first Barbarian video game experiences I had, and one I still remember.
Yeah, I grew up watching, Conan and Beastmaster. I freaking loved Beastmaster. I think after I watched Beastmaster, I think me and all my friends wanted a ferret. Like, we all wanted ferrets then, And James Earl Jones, was the classic villain. I really loved the helmet with the bat wings that he wore. And I even liked the second Beastmaster. Not a lot of people like it, but I like it. And He-Man was really, really big. I always wanted the Gray Skull toy, the giant fortress. I always wanted that. I would get so many He-Man toys, and so it would almost be just very, very natural that I would just gravitate towards games that had that kind of style. And the first game I could think of that has the barbarian kind of look that I really enjoyed was, of course, Golden Axe on the Sega Genesis. Golden Axe was just awesome because it had a fantastic soundtrack. It had, the dragons. It had mystical beasts. It had the giant sub bosses that looked like freaking, Black Metal Gamer. It looks like our friend Jason.
Yeah.
It looks like him. You'd have these giant dudes that you would fight, and it was just a lot of fun. And I remember playing it on Christmas because when I got my Genesis, I got the Genesis 6-pack, which came with Golden Axe, also came with Streets of Rage. But I kind of gravitate a little more towards Golden Axe because I like the mythological look that it had. And I remember when I killed my first enemy and hearing them scream. Like, that was just, like, so satisfying. I was like, whoa, he just, like, screamed bloody murder. And you, like, kill some more, and then you would jump on a dragon and, like, jump around and set people on fire. And those damn elves, man, stealing all your potions at the end of each level while you just was chilling on a campfire. That was such a great game. I love some Golden Axe.
The little bastards. It was a really good progression from me coming from Double Dragon, one of the first beat 'em ups I played, and Golden Axe really kind of stemmed off of Rastan to me. Coming up through the arcade, I remember when it first showed up, you're sitting there playing it. You get to ride on some of the different creatures. It always sounded like they were yelling "oh shit" when you killed somebody. And I remember nailing the I probably cheesed in. My friend probably did most of the work, and I slipped in and I got the final hit on Death Adder, which, like you mentioned, whether they look like Black Metal Gamer, the big dudes with the hammers, Death Adder with his sweet mask, the armor, and I hit that final hit, and when this axe flies up, hits him in the chest, and the blood spurts up. It was like, what, because that was early. You didn't see, you had some games like Splatterhouse, which is one of the very first, very violent ones, of course, but Golden Axe brought in the blood too, with that final hit, and just the multiplayer aspect. I mean, Golden Axe to me is still the king of really this type of genre of games.
Yeah, and I remember playing some of the sequels. It took me a while to play the sequels because I never played them on the Genesis, but I played like Golden Axe 2 and 3, and I think it was on a PS2 collection. I played those, and they were a lot of fun. And another one that I really enjoyed. And it wasn't until a couple years later because, it's funny going back, when you were the first guest of Xsgaming Podcast, one of the reasons that you were a guest is because you were one of the people I knew personally that had a TurboGrafx, and I never had a TurboGrafx, and I was like, this would be a great, discussion. But one of the games on the TurboGrafx I really enjoyed that took me a couple years and I finally got to play was Legendary Axe. Dude, that is a great, great TurboGrafx game, and very similar to Rastan in some ways. He can control a little better than Rastan. Game had a lot of challenge to it. I always thought that the guy in Legendary Axe, I thought he looked more like a savage more than a barbarian.
Yeah, he's kind of Tarzan-y looking.
Yeah.
The sequel, he turned it up and looked a little bit more, we could say a little bit more Rastan-y. You always end up doing something with vines. If it's a 2D type game, there's just something, you're climbing up chains, vines, swinging. I think, too, with his, initial short axe that he had, just kind of definitely went into that Tarzan savage vibe, But like you said, it definitely did control better. Rastan, as much as I like it, like I said, it is hard. It is very stiff, being an earlier, probably 86, 87, game. Legendary Axe was able to, go off a little bit better controls and stuff as time went on. And the sequel, to me, like I said, he picked up that different, little bit more barbarian look. But the sequel to me is still just as good. And they're, it's just a series that is a TurboGrafx exclusive. Hasn't been on anything else, and still really good. And one thing I wanted to ask you, speaking of Golden Axe, did you ever get to play Golden Axe 2 in the arcade?
No, I never got to play that one.
Yeah, see that, a lot of people, you can only get that one. The Genesis one was different. It was pretty much Genesis exclusive. It was 4 players, gigantic screen. It was at the time, one of the earliest, biggest screen games. Some people might be a little bit more familiar with X-Men, and if you never played Golden Axe, it actually looked a little bit more like the when they had a really big, what was like Street Fighter 3 cabinet. Golden Axe was kind of on par with that, with like a huge. I mean, the thing was, it had to have cost so much for these arcades, so it was probably, it had to have been them games. I think it was like $1. To play, but it was so good, and it's still sought after on emulators, because it's not available on anything else.
And that's one of the things, man. Like back in the arcade days, like if you had an arcade that had a big screen, like that was a really big deal. Like that made me think of like Ninja Warrior. It used like 3 screens, and I remember seeing that at Jungle Rapids. And that was a game that many people would just spawn to and gravitate towards because, it's funny when you think about how technology is today. Everyone talks about, frame rate. They talk about, HD, 4K, blah, blah. They all talk about that. But back in the 90s, man, if you had a game that was on like a huge projector screen, like that was the wow moment. And if it had like the really nice like speakers and sound and was like, oh man, this is like Dolby Digital music right here, but that was the thing that I think really attracted a lot of people to these Barbarian games, because these games were always, each entry of a Barbarian kind of style game was always bigger and better. if it was noteworthy. Now, there were some stinkers out there. There was some games, what was that game that had Fabio on the cover of it? It was like...
Oh, God, dude.
yeah,
Wizards and Warriors.
Yeah, yeah, you got Wizards and Warriors. That wasn't really that great.
I hate that game. Yeah, they kind of played off. It was more like it almost made me think of more like a horrible Ghouls and Ghosts, but not anywhere as good. And it's insulting to even say that. I'm not a fan of that one. And I will say too, as much as I like Rastan, its sequel, it was kind of known more as like the Rastan Saga, and you'd have Rastan Solutions, Rastan Saga 1, Rastan Saga 2. Man, it really changed. The sprites were really big, but the gameplay seriously lacked. And actually, looking up a lot of these games, I just kind of pulled from memory. But I was like, I'm gonna look at a couple of lists. I thought there actually was a Rastan 3. I never knew this existed. It turned into a beat 'em up. Both the other Rastans were 2D side scrollers. But with part 3, it looked like it had the different planes, a beat 'em up, just very cool. It was Warrior's Blade, Rastan Saga 3, and this is a game I've never seen, never played. Really curious about it though. And going on too, for an earlier game, to me like Rygar.
Oh yeah.
In that genre, and it's a game to me, it kind of had that early, slight Metroid feel to it. One of the earlier open games, so much better than the arcade. I hate the arcade version. I like the Master System version. It's more similar to the arcade to me, but it's still a lot better. But the NES one, you get your different grappling hooks, pulleys, and you have to find a new weapon or accessory to get to a new area. You had those giant Buddha-looking bald guys giving you advice and hints. And it's tough, man. I remember, actually beating that game in the past, but it's one going back to and trying to play. As much as I remember loving it, it's kind of like, man,
yeah,
this game got really hard.
Yeah, I remember Rygar was also released on the PS2. And if you play Rygar on the PS2, you'll notice a huge similarity to God of War. And I think the folks at God of War really took the inspiration of Rygar and made it their own. And I mean, I know it's like Greek mythology, but when I think of like badass barbarian guys, like big dudes, you got to think of Kratos. I mean, God of War was just something special at that time. This was a time that we didn't have a whole lot of... we had the hack and slashes, but not to that caliber. I think a lot of people kind of downplay God of War now because we've had so many of them. But I remember when God of War first came out back in like 2005. I was working at Babbage's at the time, and all of us could not stop talking about this game. Like, we were like, dude, this is... such a brutal game, and it was exactly what we'd always wanted to play in a barbarian game. I mean, you could like, you had like naked chicks and freaking gods, and you destroyed all these monsters and Cyclops and all that stuff. I mean, if you grew up with movies like Sinbad, it was just something amazing. Like, I cannot wait to see what God of War has in store for, the next entry. Is supposed to be coming out, I believe, next year. But
yeah, changing things up.
Yeah.
And it's one, speaking of too, as you could say, they could take a little bit of inspiration, as the new Rygar did. The blades kind of similar to the old disc armor from Rygar. Actually, I kind of enjoyed the newer Rygar. It was tough. I was terrible at it, like a lot of games, but I did not hate it. It was better than I thought it would be. But one of the kings of barbarians, once again, Conan, took a lot of inspiration in the game they made from God of War. And the Conan game is really great.
I still need to play it.
Yeah, dude, it's on 360 and PS2. And, if you like God of War and Conan, it has the long boss battles, kind of with like the QTE events to an extent. It's really good, violent, but if you're a fan of Conan and a fan of the God of War series, you kind of owe it to yourself to check out, the Conan. It actually, it's one of those ones that pulled it off too, that when you imitate, another series to an extent, you can pull it off. That always helps. And it was one, that came out, and I think it, still stands up and is really fun to play.
Another, going back to Golden Axe a little bit, a Golden Axe title that I think a lot of people should check out, and it was exclusively only on the Sega Master System, and that was Golden Axe Warriors. It was like Golden Axe meets Zelda. It was like top-down action RPG, played a lot like Zelda. I mean, Zelda was like the shit back then. I mean, everyone was doing Zelda in some way or another, other than Highlight. Highlight was just terrible. But
no, yeah, don't play that.
Don't play Highlight. Play some Zelda or play Golden Axe Warriors. It was a really fun game. It took Golden Axe's story and made it even more involved. Like, you know, you were still battling Death Adder, but it was a little bit more of a story to it. It wasn't just like stage by stage, you know, fighting guys and getting to the next stage. I mean, it was a little more thought into it, and it's one of those Sega Master System games that you don't hear a whole lot of people talk about unless they're talking about value and collecting. They're like, oh, I'm getting Golden Axe Warriors. But it's a good game. It's actually really, really good.
Yeah, I would throw out two within the same series, Axe Battler, which is on the Sega Game Gear.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that, you know, has a little bit of a mixture too, with some overhead and goes into some side battles, unless I'm getting that confused with the one you just mentioned. Either way, both are really good. I think it's the one you kind of have like some one-on-one fights in between. Pretty much almost anything within the Golden Axe series is really good, except for some of the later games, which, you know, they don't really even need to be mentioned. Stick back with the older ones, man. You're good to go. Even 3, which we never got, but it's available on some of the Genesis collections. I think it was Europe and Japan, or they're just Japan only. And I actually enjoy that one quite a bit. You know, finally gives you kind of a more beast character, which you know, you could see in some Barbarian movies like Deathstalker. They had some kind of you know, Wolfman type creatures that the Deathstalker would fight against, and it kind of give you one of those, so a little bit more variety. And while it's still, you know, no, it's not the original. I think it still holds its place. You know, it's very good. And also along that, with Golden Axe being, you know, on the Genesis, I'd say if you're into these type of games, Genesis is the system overall. You know, with Golden Axe 1, 2, and 3, you know, the ability to play Master Systems, and like you said, the one you'd mentioned, the Golden Axe Warrior, and, you know, a couple other ones, Blades of Vengeance, just to speak on it for a second, it's pretty cool. It has like a 2-player function, which to me is just always an added bonus. Kind of bloody, like a lot of these games are. You have Kadash. Kadash is not that great. I think it's better than Rastan Saga 2, which is also available on there. So, I mean, Genesis really, you know, to me, as I started collecting for it, it was like, wow. Like, I thought it was really cool that there was that many of that style of game. And even with Rastan being on the Master System, there was just something about, you know, those type of games that were more on the Genesis. And I will bring up, too, quickly, Conan on the NES, which you probably shouldn't play, and is a terrible example of Barbarian games. So, you know, stick to Rastan and Golden Axe.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at some of the games I was going to mention, and I mean, Legendary Axe, of course, is TurboGrafx, but most of the rest of them are Genesis. Because I was going to talk about another action RPG Barbarian style game that has to be mentioned. That's Sword of Vermilion. Another fantastic game, and it's like, yeah, it's Sega Genesis. Now, would you classify this as meeting the criteria of the topic when I say that another game I want to mention is probably I'm trying to remember the name of it now, ActRaiser?
Well, yeah, that one's kind of borderline there. It definitely has that feel lots of times. Sometimes we would get the bigger sprites in these games, it felt like. And if you had a big sword, to me, that one still does, you know, it kind of qualify. You have some other aspects of it with the city building and such.
Yeah.
So it kind of opens, you know, things up to where it might give you a little bit, you know, more bang for your buck than just the initial hack and slash.
I mean, if anything, ActRaiser 2 definitely falls into it, because ActRaiser 2, they took all the God mode, like sim elements, and they threw it out the window, and it became just a straight up hack and slash. Like, that was I actually played ActRaiser 2 before I played ActRaiser 1, and I was like kind of confused when I went back, because I would always go and rent video games, and I rented ActRaiser 2 because I saw it on Nick Arcade, and I'm like, man, I really want to play this, and went home, played it, enjoyed it, and then I saw that they had ActRaiser 1, and I'm like, I've never played this, and I played it, and the beginning of it was like ActRaiser 2, music fantastic, Yuzo Koshiro, this great music. Playing it, and then all of a sudden I was controlling this little chubby cherub angel, and I was like, oh, you need to do this to this village. I'm like, what is this? And even back then I had never played those kind of games before, so that literally turned me off when I was a kid. I was like, dude, I want to go back and fight some dragons and demons. I don't care about this person's village.
Yeah,
I'll be
it's
honest.
fun with that warrior character too, even with games like the Dungeons and Dragons, Shadows of Mystara, games like that. You'd always end up with a barbarian type character in a lot of those games. And another one that was a really big favorite of mine on the Super NES was Magic Sword. And that one it gave you a myriad of characters that you could play with, but there was a distinctly barbarian looking guy. And Magic Sword is just so fun. You can go through every single level. Man, that's one that's always held up for me, where it has like a 2-player function. I believe in the arcade one it did with the side characters. The Super NES is, I know, single only, but just one with a lot of those creatures that are brought in those games. They kind of branch out into others, and the barbarian character is one that the warrior has showed up in many RPGs. Even up through your Diablos, your Gauntlets. That warrior barbarian character is one that's really kind of stood the test of time and still just hung around like many years, and it's like you still see a good old barbarian hanging around.
And I think we always will, because I think when it comes down to it, the barbarian was always so popular with video games because it showed the epitome of being strong. You think of a barbarian hero, and he's fearless, he's strong, he can get the job done, and it was just something that was really appealing, especially, if you were like a little kid at the time. It's like, man, I want to be as big as this dude when I grow up,
Yeah, with something to look up to, whether that in the same sense as like wrestlers and such. Like a lot of our heroes, for our age and our generation looking up, were these big, manly men. And, you learn as you get older, it's like you can look up to anybody in all, shapes and sizes. But, for a lot of us, that really, was the standard. Like you said, they get the job done,
Yep. Exactly. Now, before we close the show into games we've been playing recently, I'm going to do a little questionnaire for you, James. Something we do every once in a while. And I'm going to ask for your recommendation for someone that, we're in our little video game store. Because I'm always like, yeah, you're in a video game store and you're being approached by a customer or someone, and they're like, yeah, I want to play a barbarian game. What game would you like throw in their face and be like, here you go, here's a good barbarian game?
It's gotta be a golden axe. Really, it's still the one, as we've mentioned, like the God of War, taking over that kind of tone is to be the modern day classic one. For me, it would be, maybe if they're looking for a little bit more kind of retro style one, it would have to be one of the golden axes, which, became the king. I think it's, still held its crown, like I said, despite a bad game or two, within the series. Any of the initial ones, I'd be like, here, you really need to get here on if you have a modern system too, PS3, 360, get the Genesis collection.
Yep.
You're gonna get, 1, 2, and 3 on there. You can't go wrong, with any of those. I think they're a little bit more, depending on which one you pick. One could be a little bit more fast paced than the other. Like I said, as much as I love Rastan, with that being one of my initial memories, it is kind of slow paced. Some people might not dig that much, but Golden Axe gives that opportunity for 2-player, which just, to me, always makes a game just a little better. Like, even if it sucks, if you can suffer through it with somebody else, that just makes it better. But Golden Axe is not the case because it's fucking awesome. So, that's the one. Get a Genesis collection. Just play Golden Axe. You got to play it. It's great.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend anyone that's listening that if you have not picked up this compilation, it's on PS3 and Xbox 360. It's the Sonic Ultimate Collection. Now, what's great about this compilation is you're going to get, the games that we mentioned, like Golden Axe 1, 2, and 3, and also Golden Axe Warriors, because this Ultimate Collection also unlocks some Sega Master System titles. And, I mean, if you have an Xbox 360 or a PS3 and you want to play some good Genesis games, this is a great compilation. Also, it's got achievements and trophies for that replayability. It's probably one of my favorite compilations that's ever came out. I love that. Love it.
Yeah, they definitely did a good one. And if you get a PS2 and you do want to check out Rastan, it's available on one of the Taito collections. There's 2 of them. I don't know which one it is. Just look for Rastan on there. But there's a bunch of other really good games, too, that may not be Barbarian ones, but it's still worth checking out. So those are 2 with the Genesis ones and the Taito 2, which we love compilation discs. So it gives you a chance to try out a lot of different ones. So there's a couple different generations of systems you can pull out and check out some Barbarian games and, a bunch of other ones too.
Exactly. Now, we're going to get into games we've been playing recently. My list, I'll go ahead and say my list because it's very short. Even though I'm going to have a lot of games to play. But mostly I've been playing Sonic Mania, and before Sonic Mania I was actually playing Wonder Boy. Not the new Wonder Boy, the old Wonder Boy on the TurboGrafx. It was one of those things, like I saw it was on limited run, and I've been wanting this game for so long, and I'm like, you know what, I haven't played Wonder Boy in a long time. I'm going to go back and play it on my Pi, play it on the PC Engine. And been playing that, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I did get the Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 that comes with Mega Man 7, 8, 9, and 10. I mostly just got that because it's on disc, and I'm like, I've always wanted to have like a disc copy of Mega Man 9 and 10. And I play a little bit of Mega Man 8. I know a lot of people are not fans of Mega Man 8, but I actually really like that one. Despite the, really bad voice acting where Dr. Light sounds like Elmer Fudd, but it's still Dr. Wily. But it's a good game, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I played a little bit of Splatoon 2 on the side, but other than that, that's pretty much my gaming. What about you, James?
Yeah, like I said, I've got Splatoon 2 sitting on the side, the Puyo Tetris and Cave Story, all which I have, yet to try. I did get to play some Mario Kart 8, download a couple games. Inferno was one where it's all about burning stuff. Kind of remind me a little bit of like the Trash Panic games where you have to, smash a certain amount of garbage. This one is just like burning amount of stuff, but I don't really know if there's like a time limit or any kind of constraint, but if you're like a pyromaniac, like you might like this game. Could be good to check out. I got the Wonder Boy. I downloaded that one. And wow, man, like the graphic, it's a really beautiful game. And the thing I like is you can switch back and forth between the old graphics and the new. And I do it once in a while, and you can see like it's the same game, but just the graphics are like, wow. And you look at the old one, it's like, man, like I appreciate old stuff, but man, this looks like crap. And
it's rough. It's rough going back to it.
It's up there, like if you liked like how like the DuckTales, like the newer version of that looked, man, it's like on par with that as far as and to me, like old DuckTales still looks better than old Wonder Boy, but it's still that kind of difference to where it's just it's kind of like a joy just to play it because it looks so pretty. I picked up the that Fast RMX game. F-Zero looking one. Didn't get to play it. I just dropped a few dollars on the eShop and picked up a couple games, which I might get to play in the next day or so. Phantom Trigger was another one I got when I got Sonic, of course. Went ahead and got both those. And Phantom Trigger is another one of those I call them shitty graphic games that, I guess kind of like an old style, maybe like your Hyper Light Drifter, which I didn't play that. I mentioned Uncanny Valley last show, which I was a big fan of, and Phantom Trigger kind of has a little bit more of a Zelda feel, kind of mixes in, reminds me of some of those shooters like Ikaruga where you gotta, switch to the different color to either, attack or defend, certain enemies. This kind of has that feel. You get different weapons that can break through different areas, but it's got that kind of, going back graphic, which has been, it's took me a little bit to grab onto that, but a couple of the ones I played I've actually really enjoyed. It goes to show the gameplay is what matters. And a earlier game like that I mentioned way back, which has a sequel coming out, is Nidbogg. Really cool Vita PS4 game about fencing. It's very fast and frantic, just kind of like one-on-one fencing fights, but it just really captures you. And I kind of went and thought back about that, how that had like really like archaic looking graphics, but it was just so fun. So it's kind of cool to be a little bit more accepting of these, because when I see them initially, I'm put off, and I imagine maybe some other people might be too. But I'd say look at some of the previews, and if you're into the survival horror, the Uncanny Valley's good. If you like more like a Zelda style, Phantom Trigger's good, and there might be one of these like shitty graphic games that is up your alley. So they actually are really worth checking out. And that's about.
I was about to say, James, I like how you're just like shitty game graphics. Usually people are like
shitty graphic games, man. That's how I describe them. It's just that was my initial thought. I was like, man, this looks kind of like shit. But like I said, it's the gameplay behind them, and I mean, I understand it's probably a big cut, in cost with the guys doing that. You still have the same amount of love. It's kind of like the difference in, like I said, like the Wonder Boys. It's kind of like that. You play one of these games, it looks like old Wonder Boy. You're not getting those new high-tech graphics. But at the end, it's about the game. And like I said, a lot are still, give them a chance. I was put off by them for a long time, and I gave in. So if you're thinking about it, give one of these shitty graphic games a chance. You might just love it.
I just love it because usually some people are like, oh, it's very retro. It looks like an NES title. But you're just like, dude, it's shitty.
Yeah. Man, with the way the graphics go now, it's like they're just so amazing. It's where like some are just have that, nice look, but to me, these are like some, in television looking stuff, and they don't even look like 8-bit to me. I'm like, what is this? But they're fucking good. So check them out, man, for sure.
And that needs to be a genre: shitty graphic games.
Yep.
So yeah, I want to hear someone like review a game that's like, this game right here is a part of the shitty graphic genre. Is it shit though? No, it's actually really good.
SGG games.
So again, guys, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to another episode of Xsgaming Podcast. If you're listening to us on Podomac, be sure to check us out as well on iTunes and leave us a little review, because the reviews really help the show and get more listeners, and we can get more people. And who doesn't want more listeners when you make a podcast? And also, if you're listening to us on Podomac or on iTunes, be sure to check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Xander Skullion. That's where you can listen to archived episodes of Xsgaming Podcast, and also other content that I make, including a series like Games You Should Check Out, where I talk about game recommendations, and I have recommendations from viewers like you with the 1 minute crunch. They have to describe a game and recommend it in about a minute. Also have Let's Plays and unboxings, like my recent video was an unboxing of the Sonic Mania Collector's Edition. If you guys want to check that out, you can. And again, that is youtube.com/Xander Skullion. As always, guys, thanks for listening, and as always, happy gaming.
Have a barbaric evening, everyone.
Shitty graphics games.
Shitty graphics.
Can't get enough of Xsgaming Podcast? Be sure to check out our audio podcast on Podomac.com. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you have a YouTube channel or podcast you'd like to share, be sure to check us out on Facebook on our group page and join the community. As always, guys, thank you so much for all the support, and happy gaming.